be damned. Ohio State gets a much-needed win over Nebraska, considering what happened in West Lafayette 2 weeks ago. Buckeyes survive here 36-31 over the 2-7 Huskers. So not an impressive win. No style points there. Nothing to impress the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, but Ohio State is now 8-1. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, took it in. Of course, the noon time start, Eastern time on Fox. Nebraska got the football, and it was much of what we've seen in recent days out of the Ohio State defense, out of the entire season from the Ohio State defense. Devine Ezigbo having his way in the run game. Adrian Martinez flushed out of the pocket several times. Oron designed quarterback runs, rushing for big yardage. He had 2 TD runs on the day, and Nebraska scored easily 7-0 out of the gate. Really, the drive was highlighted by a Jack Stoll catch, the tight end for Nebraska, who had 3 receptions on the day. He was blanketed in coverage, a guy all over him, and he made a one-handed catch on 3rd and long to preserve the drive, and the Huskers scored to make it 7-0. Nebraska then tried probably what's going to be the blooper highlight of the weekend. Their kicker on the kickoff, one Caleb Lightbourne, tried an onside kick. So he tried the deal where you step past the football and then you kick it behind the other leg, and he completely screwed it up. And the ball, he fell down, the ball went nowhere, and it just kind of spun right there. And Ohio State had the ball at the Nebraska 35-yard line, and he looked like a fool and left to the field, and he slammed his fist down, and it was quite amusing. So that gave Ohio State the chance to score a touchdown. You would think that the Buckeyes would have capitalized there. They did not. They had a third. This is what Ohio State's offense has become. They are so finesse that they had a 3rd and a half a yard. They have a top 5 to 10 running back in the country in J.K. Dobbins. They have Mike Weber, who is certainly formidable as well, a top 25 to 50 running back in the nation, a very good running back with a little bit more power than Dobbins, arguably. They have an offensive line of a bunch of guys that were recruited as 4- and 5-star players. They elect not to smash it ahead. We know that physical teams win national championships. This Ohio State team is not prepared to win a national championship or a Big Ten championship, facing the likes of Michigan State next week and Michigan in 2 weeks if they continue to play finesse football. 73 passes against Purdue. That was based on the situation to a large extent, although that was the mindset and the approach going into the game. On a 3rd and half a yard, they run a jet sweep with Paris Campbell. It goes nowhere. They went for it on 4th down. That goes nowhere. They gave up the football. They could not get a half yard on the Nebraska defense. That's 70th in the nation in rush defense. They couldn't do that in 2 plays. So this Ohio State team, yes, they're talented, but they don't have the mindset, both from the coaching staff and the play calling, nor the players, to be a physical team, and physical teams win national championships. Fast, explosive teams that are also physical at the point of attack. Offensive line, defensive line, physical, dominant, win championships. This team's not there, and they only have 3 games, of course, to get there. Keandre Jones blocked a punt to make it 7-2, so he came in off the left side, did a tremendous job blocking the punt. He's a 2016 signee who was the 9th-rated outside linebacker according to 247 Sports. He was a top 100 player, so we may see more of Keandre Jones once the usual NFL players depart Columbus next season. Johnny Dixon on a big 42-yard touchdown reception from Dwayne Haskins. It was a gimme by the Nebraska defense. They blew a coverage. Dixon came underneath as everyone went deep. Dixon came underneath for a long crossing route, and he just pranced into the end zone, 42-yard play, and the Buckeyes took the lead at 9-7. They would score again to make it 16-7. Odd sequence of back-to-back plays in which Ohio State had the football. They called Benjamin Victor for a offensive pass interference, and basically there was little hand fighting. He took one swipe at the defender, and that was the pass interference call. Then the very next play, they called one on Nebraska that was even worse. The defensive player didn't touch the Ohio State receiver, phantom pass interference calls. I see way too much pass interference in this league and in the one that they play on Sunday. All right, big targeting call on Jordan Fuller, who leads the Buckeyes in tackles, a safety who has improved remarkably from about this point last season and really taken a leadership role on the Ohio State defense from the safety position. So he left the game. Fortunately for the Buckeyes, Brendan White stepped in for him, had 13 tackles. Urban Meyer was asked about his play after the game. He said that they initially trusted Brendan White as a special teams player, and he proved himself there. He's looked good in practice. They felt comfortable. Obviously didn't want to lose one of their best players on defense, as they are just beat up in the secondary, and we'll get to that in just a second. But Brendan White comes in and makes 13 stops. JoJo Domann on the strip sack of Dwayne Haskins, and this happened twice in this game. JoJo Domann, strip sack coming from Dwayne Haskins, opposite of his blind side. Tremendous play to pry the ball loose, and that led to a touchdown for Nebraska as they took it immediately from there and drove about 50 yards for the score. Then the next time Ohio State had the football, KJ Hill fumbled. Luke Gifford recovered for the Huskers, and Nebraska went 8 plays, 47 yards. On that one, more Zigbo, more Martinez, more carving up of the Ohio State defense. Again, 8 plays, 45 yards, 47 yards. That's about 5.5, 6 yards per pop. 21-16 Nebraska at that point. So we're looking at an Ohio State deficit, much like the Minnesota game, after halftime against an inferior foe. Haskins threw a horrible pick with double coverage and the guy not open in the end zone. Haskins, 18 of 32 for 252 yards. This was by far his worst performance. It wasn't horrible compared to your standard college quarterback, but for Dwayne Haskins, it was an awful performance. He missed wide open receivers. The receivers don't help him out a lot. These Ohio State receivers, they make the catches they're supposed to make most of the time. They are good without the football getting open against either a zone or man-to-man typically, but they don't outfight defenders for the football, and they don't make tremendous catches. If it's a difficult catch, they most likely won't make it. And this has been from a group that is basically, aside from Victor, a collection of seniors that came back, even though they had NFL grades that would have taken them in the 3rd to 5th rounds, talking about the likes of Terry McLaurin and Austin Mack and so forth. 30-21, Paris Campbell had a big play in the drive. J.K. Dobbins scores the touchdown. They go up 30-21. J.K. again with a long touchdown run, his longest run of the season, to make it 36-24 on the failed 2-point conversion. But Adrian Martinez right back down the field. So this kid made an awful, stupid play in the first half in which Nebraska was almost certainly going to score points and almost certainly going to score a touchdown. They had 1st and goal at the 3-yard line, and he's flush from the pocket, and he throws the ball behind him to a Nebraska receiver who was not expecting the ball. It hits off of him. Loose football, Ohio State recovers. So Nebraska had a 21-16 lead, and they gave Ohio State possession of the football in which they almost certainly would have scored a touchdown. The Buckeyes could have been in big trouble. J.D. Spielman, mismatch in the secondary. He scores very similar to the play in which Johnny Dixon scored, in which they drove the zone out and then they went underneath, or the man-to-man, and then cut the wide receiver underneath on the crossing route, and that was J.D. Spielman. Of course, Nebraska has maybe the best wide receiver core in the Big Ten, at least the 2 starters in Spielman and in Stanley Morgan. So Spielman scores, and it's 36-31 suddenly. Ohio State, against a porous Nebraska defense, was able to run out the clock with first down after first down. Listen to Urban Meyer's news conference after the game. He talked about the beat-up secondary, certainly hurt by the Jordan Fuller targeting ejection. Isaiah Pryor has a shoulder issue. He should be back for the Michigan State game next week. Jeffrey Okudah had a freak, what Urban Meyer phrased as a freak incident, groin injury in practice. Won't go into that. Running back situation, Urban Meyer said they totally overhauled the scheme. Must be a lot of blocking configurations and blocking assignments up front. I didn't see a whole lot of difference in regards to what they were trying to do, except for pounded more between the tackles, in which Ohio State should be able to do against Nebraska, but they still generally couldn't do it consistently, although they broke the big plays. JK, 23 carries, 163. Mike Weber, he ran very well. The issue was that he fumbled twice. Ohio State got both back. One got kicked out of bounds. The other one was recovered by Terry McLaurin. Otherwise, Mike Weber looked really good in this game. 9 carries for 91 yards, breaking tackles, showing a burst that he hasn't shown since his first season in 2016. Obviously, he was banged up much of last season. But Urban Meyer said after the game, we didn't see Mike Weber late in the game. Maybe that had to do with ball security. He wouldn't say that for sure, but he said maybe that had to do with ball security. Weber put it on the carpet twice. Draymond Jones, Robert Landers jumped off sides 3 times in 1 quarter, as Ohio State racked up 6 penalties. Not a huge issue there. Let's focus on Nebraska as well. Scott Frost is doing good things at Nebraska. They weren't going to win this year. I picked them to go 6-6. I was probably even jumping the gun a bit, although look at the results. They could have beaten Northwestern easily. They could have won other games fairly easily. They blew the Colorado game as well. So this team's sitting at 2-7. They could be 4-5 right now and playing for a bowl bid. They're not. They're out of the postseason, but they're getting much better. This is going to be a pretty good football team very soon, especially in that division, competing for division championships, or at least getting into that 8-4 range starting next season, I would expect, under Scott Frost. Adrian Martinez appears to be the real deal. He can sling it. He can run. And he was recruited heavily for a reason. Ohio State's got Michigan State next week. Of course, Nebraska's playing out the string. They play Iowa at the end of the season. They have yet to play Illinois as well. So they should be able to win 1 or 2 more games, finish at 4-8 or 5-7 possibly if they upset Iowa. That game's going to be on the road, though, at Kinnick Stadium. For Ohio State, it's Michigan State, it's Maryland, which is not necessarily a joke of a game, especially since the Buckeyes performed like this against Nebraska and Indiana and Minnesota, so they can't look past anyone. And, of course, this Michigan team that's playing Penn State right now as we speak with a 7-3 lead, I believe, 7-0 lead over Penn State. So Ohio State has much work to do, because the defense didn't get gashed quite as much against a pretty talented offense here. So the defense, I believed, improved because they faced better offensive personnel than they faced all season, except for the Penn State and TCU games. So this would be the 3rd best set of personnel in terms of running backs, wide receivers, and a playmaker at quarterback that Ohio State has faced this season. And they didn't get gashed embarrassingly. They didn't look good on defense. They gave up 31 points. But the offense continues to have to work on the run game, and Haskins had his worst game. So if he plays a great game, if he plays his standard game in this one, they probably win by 3 touchdowns. But he missed a ton of throws, and that's what it is for the Buckeyes. They survived 36-31. They will go to Michigan State, a difficult place to play, as always, against Sparty, who won today against Maryland 24-3 to move on to 6-3. This is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Leave your comments in the comments section and start up the chat, because we're getting down to the nitty-gritty for conference championship races and the college football playoff, of course, with 3 weeks left to play before championship week. Let's talk it up right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.